Hi, this is Darby, and this is the first video of the European Seminar Video Blog Project. We just came from a meeting at the Council of the European Union, and they gave us these wonderful folders. They talked a lot about the functions, and specifically the qualified majority voting system, to make sure that the large states don't have too much power over the small states. One thing that I thought was really interesting that they pointed out was talked about how the Commission puts the decision on the table, and then the Council and the European Parliament then vote on that legislation. But the important part for the legislative procedure was that the Commission can also withdraw this legislation, and that's very important to the legislative procedure because that gives them a big nullifying mark. So just something to keep in mind. Thanks from Brussels.
Hello, this is Darby reporting from Luxembourg from the European Investment Bank. The European Investment Bank is the EU's lending institution. It was established under the Treaty of Rome. The European Investment Bank brings cohesion to the EU member states through financing, where the member states are the main shareholders. The member states set policy goals and oversee the two main decision-making bodies. The two main decision-making bodies are the Board of Governors and the Board of Directors. Hi, and welcome to this segment of the European Union News Channel. Today, I visited the Scottish Government European Union Office. Here you can see the outside of the Scotland House, as they call it. As we walk upstairs and take a look out the window, you can make note of the close proximity of the Scotland House from the European Commission and the Council of Europe, which are both right down the street. This is important for Scotland's influence on the EU, which we will get to. Our presenter, the man depicted to the far right, standing at the podium, is Mr. James Johnston. Mr. Johnston is the policy officer for the Scotland House. In order to talk about Scotland's influence on the EU, we must first understand their position in the EU. Scotland is in political union with Great Britain, meaning they are a part of the United Kingdom. Although Scotland's legal system remains separate from the other regions in the UK, including England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, Scotland is a part of the UK government, meaning David Cameron is their Prime Minister. In the 2011 general election of Scotland, the Scottish National Party won majority. They supported Scottish independence. Finally, by September of 2014, a referendum was held to decide whether or not Scotland should become independent from the United Kingdom. This referendum was rejected with a majority vote of 55% to 45%. With an 85% voter turnout. As the referendum did not pass, Scotland is still in political union with the UK. This leaves Scottish influence on the EU in a sticky situation. A salient discussion here is the argument over the rise of the devolved states. The other member states do not want the devolved states, such as Scotland, to have decision-making power, because this brings up debates on how treaties on the EU will apply to the devolved states, such as Scotland. This caused many member states to be against Scottish independence. However, Scotland does have some influence on the EU. To name a few, they can participate in councils, have recognized leaders in some areas such as fisheries, marine planning, and renewables, and the understanding with the UK that Scotland can pursue Scottish priorities. Hi, this is Darby again, reporting from Brussels, Belgium at the European Commission. Today, we heard from two policy officers from the Migration and Home Affairs branch of the European Commission. This was Ms. Angeliska Sternik, focusing on irregular migration and return policy, where we talked a lot about the policy side of things, and we heard from Mr. Juan Luis Ballesteros, who is a policy officer focusing on legal migration and integration, where he talked more about the legal side of things. Focusing on 4 types of immigration flows was the intra-migration, which is just typical EU freedom of movement within the EU member states, legal migration, which is valid entrance into the EU, irregular migration, which is not valid immigration, and asylum and resettlement, known as recognized refugees, normally stemming from Jordan and Syria. Ms. Sternak talked a lot about irregular migration into the EU, a problem that I did not realize was such an issue for the EU. It is the job of the Commission to come up with directive sanctions and measures against employers of illegally staying in third country nationals. Basically, what this means is the Commission comes up with different sanctions to punish and try to overcome the issue of illegal migration into the EU. Some examples of this include the Facilitators Package, which is a directive defining the facilitation of unauthorized entrance, transit, and residence, basically the people who smuggle others into the EU illegally. But because this is a transnational crime, the Commission can only punish within the European Union, which makes it very difficult to punish because it cannot step on bounds outside of the European Union. Not only looking at the border, but this Facilitators Package is trying to go further than that and punish the transnational impacts. Also, there's the Victims of Trafficking Directive, and if the victim spills some info that, oh, this smuggler was helping or something, like an illegal victim is caught, and they say, okay, if you tell us some information about the smuggler, we may grant you residence or potential residence. And I actually asked a question about this because I wasn't sure how specific they could be with saying, oh, I promise. How truthful is that promise if you spill information? And to be honest, Ms. Sternak was a little vague about answering that question, so I thought that was something just to keep in mind, that even though Victims of Trafficking Directive, you spill us information, oh, we promise you will get a residence permit or be able to, but then nothing comes of that. I don't know, that can be up for debate. Then there's also the Return Directive, and if an asylum seeker claims to be an asylum seeker but isn't, they have to get sent back and are punished for that. I just thought that was some interesting facts about irregular migration. Something that the Commission is having difficulty with working with the member states. Like I said before, the Commission creates the directives and sanctioned measures against irregular migration. The member states have to implement these sanctions, and the Commission is having some difficulty with getting the member states to implement the sanctions, even though it's something that the member states have been working on, blah, 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 and there's still this difficulty in that implementation. Thank you from the European News Channel. Hello again, it's Darby from the European News Channel. Today, I went to the International Energy Agency. I found this very interesting because I did not realize that there is an international body designated for emergency response in energy, such as an oil crisis. This brings on what Rebecca Gaghan talked about, who's the head of Communications and Information Office for the International Energy Agency, was the 4 E's of the sound energy policy that the International Energy Agency upholds. This includes energy security, economic growth, environmental sustainability, and engagement worldwide. Something I found very important about the IEA's goals was the emergency response, specifically to oil crises. This started in the pre-Gulf War and was further executed post-Hurricane Katrina, where collective action was needed. There can take quick responses, such as short-term demand measures, where oil can be saved, where only even number license plates cars can drive on certain days, and odd number license plates can drive on other days, or it can go further into market analysis, another aspect where the IEA focuses a lot of research on, where you're monitoring oil and gas markets and making this information available globally. So countries can see oil price trends based on investment cycles. Thus, they're able to anticipate investment cycles so governments can work to ensure investment. Hello, we would like to conclude tonight's segment of the European News Channel with a quick summary of what we've talked about on the EU institutions. We started off talking about the Council of Europe and their legislative procedure, specifically the questions about the nullification process and which branch has the most power. Then we moved on to the European Investment Bank, and it's the European Investment Bank that brings cohesion to the member states through finances and is also the leading lending institution for the EU. The Scottish Government House specified the failed independence referendum, and this leaves Scotland a part of the UK. There's blurred lines of Scottish influence within the EU, and a large debate over what the rise of the devolved powered states hold, and how this influences the decisions on how the treaty should affect these devolved states. Next, we moved on to the European Commission, where we talked about issues with irregular migration into the EU and how the Commission is working on solving those problems. Finally, we talked about the International Energy Agency, where we visited Paris, France, and learned about the developing energy crisis plans and working towards sustainable energy and even towards energy sharing. I hope you enjoyed tonight's segment. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to watch the European Union News Channel to learn about the European Union relations with Russia, Asia, and the Americas. You've been watching Darby Gould reporting for the European Union News Channel. Thank you for watching and have a great night.